Hey, what's up? This is Martha D. Staub with That Hashtag Show, and today I'm reviewing episode 2 of Lower Decks. So here we are, episode 2. So this episode starts off with Ensign Mariner and Ensign Tendi walking around the lower decks when they encounter a floating entity. They decide to capture it, and the entity ends up negotiating to avoid capture with Ensign Mariner, and she ends up asking for a tricorder with a purple stripe. Ironic thing you would ask for with an all-being entity that can give you pretty much anything. So she ends up getting the tricorder, he ends up avoiding escape, and then he ends up floating into the captain. I have a theory that all of these little introductions into these episodes actually lead to a bigger story that we're going to hear down the road. Hopefully the season finale. One thing that I'm really loving about this episode is we're starting to see the character developments between all of the ensigns. And my favorite this week was between Ensign Rutherford and Ensign Tendi. So Ensign Tendi has a little thing for Rutherford, we can kind of tell. She invited him to watch the pulsar, and obviously he doesn't have time because he's always in the Jeffries tubes, he's always working. So he actually decides to uproot his career to find a way to spend more time with Ensign Tendi, which I think is really sweet. He ends up going into medical, which he ends up finding out he does not have the bedside manner to be in medical. Kind of reminds me of my favorite holographic doctor. He ends up in command, where he did a simulation on how he could run the ship, and he ended up failing at that. In fact, the one thing that stood out to me the most was that Commander Ranson actually said, try the Janeway protocol. Now, what the heck is the Janeway protocol? We know that Lower Decks actually takes place after the events that happened on the Enterprise, so not sure if this is just something that this was halfway through Voyager and maybe they knew that Janeway was stuck in the Delta Quadrant. Not 100% sure, but I want to know what that protocol is. Then Rutherford ends up in security, which he ends up finding out that he's really good at because he's half cyborg. He ends up defeating all of these Borgs, and at the end, he just ends up looking at the Jeffries tube and he misses engineering. So he ends up going back and getting back into engineering, which was really great because all of the commanding officers actually were very supportive of him in all of these changes that he was trying to do. So, that was a great storyline. I really liked seeing the progression between Rutherford and Tendi. And actually Tendi ends up going into the Jeffries tube and watching the pulsar on her pad. So they still get to spend time with each other, but I really like that development there. So I'm really enjoying seeing the development between Ensign Mariner and Ensign Boimler. In this episode, we got to see that they were assigned to escort General Corinne down to Telgana 4. And Boimler is so adamant in being everything Starfleet. He's learning Klingon, he's learning, introductions, phrases, anything that he possibly can to make himself look good. As where Ensign Mariner doesn't really care so much. She already knows General Corinne, so they're already fighting and grappling. There's blood. They get drunk on the shuttle on the way to Telgana 4. And it's a very opposite effect that these two have. And it's funny to watch, but it's also, you can see the development between the two. You obviously know that Ensign Mariner was at one point a higher ranking officer, and she's got bussed back down to an ensign. And you can see because whenever they get down to the planet, General Corinne takes off with a shuttle. He's drunk. I don't know what that's called. It's like a FUI, flying under the influence. I'm not sure, but Corinne takes off with a shuttle. They end up stranded, and Boimler is very, very convinced and very adamant to get back before they get court-martialed. And Ensign Mariner is just so carefree. She's like, let's eat here, let's do this, let's do that. And Boimler ends up getting into a couple of obstacles between, finding ironic aliens that want to eat him and so many other things. And he gets defeated. He throws his comm badge down and he's like, I'm done with Starfleet, I'm done with all of this. And it's at that point that Ensign Mariner hires a Ferengi to stage a robbery so that Boimler can kind of get his confidence back, because that's where he's overthinking and he's just not confident in who he is. And that's really cool because you can tell she really cares for him, and there's that connection. So I really love that. Corinne ends up coming back with the shuttle. They drag him all the way to the Federation outpost, and they take off back before they can get court-martialed. And when they return, Boimler is in I guess it'd be like the 10th forward of the Cerritos, and he's telling the story of how Ensign Mariner thought he was a different alien, he wasn't a Ferengi, and so it was a really nice thing thing for Mariner to do, but I'm also seeing more of the development between the two. So I know this is only episode 2, but I'm really loving this series. I want to say I think all of the comedic effort actually goes to Ensign Mariner because she's just so carefree and fun. So I'm really enjoying this. Like I said, I don't really watch animated series, and like I said, I really wasn't thrilled about this being an animated show because as a true diehard Star Trek fan, I'm still waiting to see what happened to the Voyager crew because Voyager was my favorite season or series out of the Star Trek franchise, and we did see a little bit of that with Picard, but I want to know what the hell happened after Voyager got back, and I think I've been waiting for that for at least 20 years. I'm waiting for Janeway to make her appearance. I think that would be great. I've been wanting that conclusion to that, and I don't know if I'll ever get it, but for right now, Lower Decks is really soothing my appetite for new Star Trek shows. So it's funny, it's great. They bleeped out an F-bomb. They don't care. They're doing what they're doing, and it's funny. So I really enjoyed it. Well, I think that's pretty much it for my review on episode 2 of Lower Decks. Don't forget to come back next week for the review of episode 3. And while you're at it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any of the notifications that come through on new videos. We look forward to seeing your comments, and we'll see you next week.